And now it's time to move on and introduce you to our next speaker. Sophia Smith Galer is an award winner, journalist, author, and filmmaker. She is the BBC first ever visual journalist in faith and ethics. She travels the world telling the stories, underreported stories. And she has developed a following of 250,000 followers on TikTok. That's why we're very happy to have you here, Sophia, in this session where she's going to tell us more about how freelancers can use this platform to engage with their audiences, to build trust, and to find and tell stories. So welcome, Sophia.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you, everyone, for having me. The caveat for the whole of my presentation is that I myself am not a freelance journalist. I am staff with the BBC. However, all of the TikToking that I do, and indeed quite a lot of the social media activity that I do, you know, on all the other platforms like Instagram and Twitter, I do that all in a pretty independent capacity. So I hope that some of my learnings will be relevant to everyone in the freelance community as well. So let's go. I'm going to talk today about how I use TikTok for my journalism. I do use TikTok personally as well, and we'll get onto that too. A little bit about me. Anna's just introduced me perfectly, but to give you a sense of my career background, I suppose, this is my second role with the BBC, and I've been there for about 3 years. But my first role was as a social media producer for BBC.com, where I would create Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram content for the BBC's feature websites, BBC Future and BBC Culture, as well as always writing articles, as well as always making video. Social media has been a part of my journalism from the very beginning. And that is how I was able to pivot to TikTok when TikTok came. The reason that I explored it as a platform was because my day job, visual journalist, is kind of just another word for video journalist. I saw this new video platform come along and I thought, oh, I better figure out how it works in case I do need to use it for my employer or indeed anyone else. And what began as a little experiment turned into something really magical. So what do I do on TikTok? For me, it's a mixture of the following two things, because I do use it personally as well as professionally. So in terms of what I use it for personally, I really approach TikTok as a content creator. So I will share things that I find interesting, news stories that I find interesting, or new facts that I out interests. And equally, I share a lot about music or languages, two passions of mine. So it really is a place for me to be myself. I also take part in trends, which is a really, really important part of the TikTok platform. Quite unique in that every day it really is it is a trendsetter and culture maker, and there'll be trends to take part in all the time. Some grow organically, some don't, but there are always ideas feeding in on how you can create content, which is what other platforms have generally lacked. So this is why TikTok is making more of us content creators, one could argue. And I spend a lot of time on there, just enjoying it as a consumer, watching other people's TikToks, commenting on their TikToks. I favorite lots of TikToks that I find really interesting and I go back to and I watch later, especially the more factual or informative ones. But you're all here to hear how I use it for journalism. I have done investigations on the app, looking into either the platform itself or particular users on there, and I continue to do so. I've used TikTok as a news gathering tool, finding stories, and I've used it as a promotional tool. So I've come up with TikToks to try and draw attention to work that I have done. And rather happily, I was mentioned in a select committee in the House of Lords about journalism innovation, and Professor Charlie Beckett very nicely said that I'm doing terrific, really clever stuff on TikTok. I do not think TikTok is the solution to the news media's problem, but it's a good example of her using the technology, and she has done it in an entrepreneurial, editorial way. And I completely agree with Charlie that I think getting on TikTok isn't necessarily going to solve all our problems with engaging younger audiences or getting more eyeballs on your journalism, but it's a start, and it is an idea, and it's worked for me, and maybe it will work for others. I just want to give an example of a couple of the things that I've done on here. So last year, the BBC News theme went viral on social media, and I found this creator's TikTok, and I tweeted about it. It all went viral, and it turned into a news story in and of itself. I've made videos that kind of combine my specialism in religion and TikTok. So this is all about how a group of Jewish content creators use the app to tackle anti-Semitism on the app. I covered virtual pride, which was a TikTok first movement. This was an investigation that I did about a trend that was going viral, that was deeply colorist, and hadn't been taken down, and was being seen by millions and millions of people. This is probably one of my proudest career achievements. I created what I endearingly call the TikTocumentary, but I created a TikTok podcast, I mean like a radio documentary, and it was also my first television documentary as well. And I explored how TikTok was influencing the US election. And out of it came these two exclusives that you can see on the left-hand side. So you can see that I found that TikTokers were being paid to create political ads, which is banned on the app, and also raises questions about how money is used in elections and not declared. And I also found, as you can see in the other story, that President Trump's campaign were covertly campaigning on TikTok while simultaneously trying to get the app banned. And I'm really proud that I found that story, all because I spend so much time on TikTok. I'm not a tech journalist, and I'm not an American political journalist, but I found that story. I'm really proud of that. For that TikTok documentary, I used a couple of new things that I hadn't seen any other journalists do before. So I used the duet feature on TikTok to vox pop. Vox pop is something that any radio journalist or telejournalist knows that we've been doing for a really long time. But the duet feature allowed TikTokers who wanted to have something to say, offered them an arena with which to say it. And I would then use that in the television documentary. This here, Hey, I've Got a Story for You, was a kind of spoken word poem that I delivered all about my documentary that I had made, reaching 150,000 people. Crucially, that video spun itself onto the TikTok algorithm and found young Americans. That's all about this election, and I wanted it to reach young Americans, first-time voters, and it did. And even my journalism managed to reach Donald Trump Jr. A lot of people might know me for my sea shanty about the Suez boat. That was a meeting of memes. That was a meeting of two worlds in which a news story met the meme of the sea shanty, which went viral on TikTok. And that's to date my most watched video, cumulatively between TikTok and then its version on Twitter and Instagram. I think over 6 million views. It got played on BBC Radio 1, on Greg James's morning show. It got me onto the front page of Egypt's most read newspaper. Kind of bonkers. And all it was about what was going on with the Ever Given to an audience who were relishing it. You couldn't get away from the Suez boat on TikTok at that point. The audiences were just crazy about it as a news story. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. How can I best serve my audience? And I came up with the sea shanty. Isn't TikTok just another social media platform? Well, it's got enormous potential for viral reach in a way that other accounts, other platforms do not necessarily have. Really, really high content density. And all that means is that in a 1-minute video, there's an awful lot packed in there, visually and information too. Low production value, a little unlike YouTube nowadays. You don't necessarily need all of the the ring lights and the professional editing software to necessarily make TikToks. Of course, there are plenty of people who do use all of that, but you don't need it to go viral. there's a really high user base under 25. So think of TikTok being the app for Gen Z. Think of Instagram being more the app for millennials, and Facebook, again, particularly me thinking of a UK audience. This is what the case is. Globally, it might not be the case in your country. There's really different kind of penetration of different social media platforms. So my recommendation is you look at what's for your country and figure out what social media platform you should be spending the most time on. Really, really high comment value on TikTok. I get the best comments and best conversations in my TikTok comments compared to what goes on Facebook or Instagram or even Twitter oftentimes. And that's mainly because I don't know if it's to do with the age demographic, but I generally encounter far less hateful comments on TikTok as an app than I do other apps, which is interesting. And as I mentioned before, TikTok really is a culture maker through its trends, unlike other social media platforms. And the perfect example of that is if you've been on Instagram lately and looking at reels, you will find that half the reels are just TikToks that went viral 2 weeks ago. TikTok is the culture maker, and other apps are finding that they're just they're turning into simply just another place for people to post their TikToks rather than Instagram necessarily coming up with loads of trends. Where might TikTok not work for news? It is seriously time consuming, right? So would you be better off using your time on other social media platforms, or indeed other stories, other avenues of which to find stories that are better for your beat? Videos can be put under review or taken down if reported. This has happened to me, and it's happened to lots of journalists that I know. Both can take an indeterminate amount of time for them to be accepted back onto the platform, by which point you've lost engagement opportunities and the news event might have changed. So in terms of moderation, it can be a tricky beast to try and work with. So should you join TikTok? Well, all depends. In my view, only if you think or agree with some of the following statements. I want more young people finding my journalism. I have 2 hours a day minimum to dedicate to scrolling and making content. I want to find out what young people are interested in. I want to speak directly to my audience and get their input in shaping my work. I'm happy showing off my personality and interests to complete strangers on the internet. I've got the support network around me if I go viral, and I've got the support network around me if I never go viral and it completely crushes my self-esteem. And I can't emphasize how important it is about the support network going viral. You might be going viral for, fantastic reasons, like, for example, my Egyptian sea shanty. The response I got was overwhelmingly positive. However, I also got a lot of trolling because of it. And I'm very grateful that I have people in the offline world who I can say, people sent me these nasty comments. And then they know to be like, are you okay, Sophia? And I don't think we talk about that enough. Certainly content creators, that there isn't much support for us generally. So it's really important for us to kind of make those support networks ourselves, because they're not going to be made for us. It is really time consuming. I spend hours a day on TikTok, and that's because I have, something I enjoy doing in my personal time. I don't actually factor it into my working day because I don't TikTok for my employer. And there are times, for example, I've been writing a book this year, and there have been times when I was writing that book that I just had to completely kind of just TikTok if I have time, but otherwise I can't do my kind of daily engagement on there, which is the kind of activity that will grow an account. So there are times where I've just completely prioritized, and TikTok has not been the number one priority. And I think having that kind of healthy attitude is what is going to keep you doing the right work at the right time for you, if that makes sense. Which journalists are on? If what I've said has piqued your interest, I really recommend following these accounts. Some of them are independent journalists. Some of them work for a news publisher. All of them do something different. And if you follow all of them, you'll get a sense of the kind of content that their fans like, the kind of content that their fans kind of don't like. And that's how you learn how to TikTok. You see what works for other people. and you decide if it's something that you want to do yourself as well. Now, this is interesting because I was really trying to think, okay, so if I'm talking to lots of freelancers, let's figure out, let's talk a bit about if we can earn money off TikTok as well. I do not personally because of my job. However, if you're an independent journalist and you want to try and use TikTok to earn some money, you can join the Creator Fund. You'll need a minimum of 10,000 followers, as well as a certain threshold of engagement and views on your videos. But you need a serious number of views on your videos for that money to be like anything substantial. I've been following content creators who sometimes share how much they've earned in a month or so. And I remember one person had videos, like numerous videos of over 1 million views. And over like quite a long period of time, she'd earned $1,000, but it was like really quite a long period of time. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, considering how much time you spend on each TikTok, like there's no way that you could pivot to just earning money off TikTok is what I'm trying to say. And you've got to remember that you might get kicked out of the Creator Fund if you repeatedly produce content that violates community guidelines or is reported for doing so, even if it doesn't actually violate those guidelines. And if you're a journalist posting regularly about controversial news events, you know, maybe there's a risk there, I'm not sure. The reality of TikToking as a journalist is that it does take up loads of my time. Daily output and planning is minimum 2 to 3 hours a day. Maintaining relationships by replying to comments is very time consuming. You do have to do a lot of mindful curation of the For You page to deliver you the kind of content that it is you want. And I would say there is a loss of privacy. This weekend, I went out both days. I was recognized both days. I was once followed off the street into the road where I lived because someone recognized me on TikTok. They're all things that might happen if you blow up in there, and it's just about learning how to deal with all of that. And then I just thought I would end here on just some comments that I've got over time, and I would say that what TikTok has allowed is essentially kind of aggressive proximity with my followers. It's been a way that I've been able to show that I'm not simply a very distant sort of austere journalist. I am someone who really wants to engage with people my age and younger. I want my journalism to be relatable and make a difference. And I want to make sure that people feel if they have a story, they feel like they can come to me and talk to me about it. And that has happened. That's happened numerous times. The book that I've been writing this year, which is all about exploring and debunking virginity and other cultural myths that we hold about sex around the world. That book would have been impossible to write if people, complete strangers on the internet, didn't feel safe enough to talk to me about really intimate things in their life that they've probably never even spoken about with many people in their, you know, physical worlds. Maybe their sexual partner, but otherwise they might not even share this information with them, but they will share it with a journalist that they know off TikTok. And that has made writing the book a real joy. And additionally, it's really added, I think, to the kind of people that I speak to in my BBC reporting as well. So yeah, it can pay. It's a lot I would add is that I would never be able to use TikTok alone. For me, I really use a whole ecosystem of different social media platforms. And at the moment, there is a real kind of appetite and mystery and curiosity about TikTok because so many people are still finding it really hard to crack. Hence why I'm doing a talk. I've been asked to do a talk today about TikTok. It's still mystifying people. People still aren't completely sure about whether to go on there or not. And what I would say is, if you want to go on there, you can give it a go, but never forget that we have. It's really important, essentially, to use lots of social media platforms in conjunction with each other to get the best, the greatest, widest, and most interesting pools of information. So yeah, I'm now ready to answer any questions if anyone has them. Shall I stop sharing my presentation or shall I leave this up?
You can stop sharing it if you want.
Great.
But it's fine. I can see you here and you have so many questions, Sophia. First of all, hi, and thank you so much for being with us. Let me ask you one question that Jeremy and Pumbia asked. That is about how to identify fake news. So Pumbi asks, hi Sophia, could you expand on using TikTok as a news gathering tool, more specifically filtering out fake leads, given that the platform is much more flooded with content as compared to Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter?
Well, if you're news gathering, I would just say that's about using your news sense. Like how do you spot fake news on other platforms as well, as you've probably been doing for a really long time on Twitter and Facebook. You just address all of the same principles. You look at the content and you try and you figure out, is this legit? What is their source? And that's what I do. I just apply the same principles that I apply to any social platform, really. I wouldn't say there's anything I do that's TikTok specific.
There is another question from S. McGarry. I'd like to ask, how do you avoid creating unintended bias, especially with this younger audience, just thinking of the anti-Trump story, then being followed by Trump Jr., etc.?
Well, I don't see it. I would debate it creating unintended bias. I created a news story. I found a news story rather, and I told it. There's certainly plenty of TikTok creators who were commenting the TikToks I was making around that, really surprised and unhappy that people that they were huge fans of were being paid to create content like this. And I don't mean that in terms of who the content was attacking or, promoting. Simply the idea that they would accept money for political ads was something that they found disturbing, because they weren't declaring it. That's the whole point. People were not being transparent about it. And the reason they weren't being transparent was because if you are transparent, you get into trouble for it. And I think a lot of the people on TikTok understand that is problematic, this lack of transparency in politics and social media. But ultimately, you can't control, you do a news story, you can't control how people receive it. Ultimately, it's a neutral product that we made.
We have one more question, Sophia, from Jessica. Jessica asks, how many of your TikTok audience members can go on to look further into news articles to read deeper into the topic at hand?
I mean, I wouldn't know, but I do know that in terms of feedback I received, I know that a lot of people found my content on TikTok, consumed it, and then messaged me on Instagram about it, because on TikTok you can't message people who don't follow you back, whereas Instagram you can. And that's where I'd get a lot of feedback about content that I made, and it's all because they would have originally found me on TikTok. And secondly, what I do get to see how many people view my profile and are exposed to the link in my bio. And there is every month, that is thousands of people. And if I have a viral video, it's hundreds of thousands. So that gives me a sense of how many eyeballs I get. My best, well, in my bio, I've seen that it gets loads of hits if I include it. So yeah, but I think what you're probably pointing to there is the idea that social media is only about getting more page views on the original news site. And I think increasingly, I have long seen social media as a distribution model. There are a number of news outlets who refuse to see it as that and would much rather just see it as, no, this is a place where we can get more eyeballs back on our website. Is that the future of news? Is that the future of how we reach younger audiences? I don't have the answer to that, but that's what I would suggest we all think about, how we see social media and its relationship with our news sites.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you so much for being here today and for your presentation. Have
No
a good
problem. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sophia, for this great presentation. And during the next days, we're going to have sessions on different platforms, Instagram and Twitter. And the idea is that us, as freelancers, we realize which one of these platforms makes more sense according to our personality, our work style, because it is not needed to have presence in all the platforms all the time. It is impossible, but then we can make the best with the ones that we consider it makes sense to use.
Labdien! Buenos dias, bos dias.
Hi. Hello.
This is the European Journalism Center.
Since 1992,
we've been helping journalists all over Europe.
Now we ask for your support.
Join the European Journalism Collective.
And with a small donation, you can help us remain independent and sustainable.
So we can continue supporting journalists just like you.
And do even more.
And do even more. And do even more.